Great to have you join the call. We've got MBA incoming students and current students joining in. This is our Global Leaders series. And so if you don't know Kay Koplovitz, and I know that you do because you logged into this call, she is the founder and original CEO of USA Network. She is the chairperson of Springboard, which is a major funder and takes major interest in women-led companies who are transforming industries. An amazing story there of, well, I think it's 836 different companies over time, some of which you know very well, some of which you will soon. Zipcar, iRobot, if I'm correct. So if you've seen cats on the little vacuum cleaners, you can thank Kay. I personally can thank
thank iRobot and Helen Greiner.
It is truly amazing if you think about everything that's happening right now with Disney, Hulu, and the way everyone has transformed the way, especially through the pandemic, how they're absorbing entertainment, sports, video, Zoom calls. You had these epiphanies, at the Thrilla in Manila, right? You were a game changer way back when. Somebody who was an innovator in bringing tennis, hockey, just the way we saw sports back in the day, and changed, multi-channel entertainment, letting the consumer decide. So I think you sold USA Today Network for $4.5 billion, and I did the math. That's about 70 billion in today's numbers in 1998. So I can barely get a Zoom.
It was when, it was when $4.5 billion was a lot of money. But USA Network and Sci-Fi and international networks that we launched were really trailblazers in the marketplace. And as you pointed out, actually, I brought all this professional sports to cable before ESPN. So Major League Baseball, the NBA, the NHL, Augusta National Golf, the US Open Tennis, all kinds of sport events. It was really back then in the 60s when I really was a student and wrote my master's and was still an undergraduate student. I went to Europe, backpack, $5 a day back then, can you believe it? I saw this poster walking around in London. I saw this poster for a lecture on satellites. And I grew up as a kid in the 50s and 60s, and we had, Sputnik in 1957. The Russians put up a space satellite, and I was like, I was fascinated and frightened at the same time of like the space wars were coming along. And so I was always kind of, interested in space. And I saw this lecture being given on satellites. So I went in and listened to this lecture. And it was a message that was given that was so powerful. And as a student, I was like very curious, and I was listening to this lecture about geosynchronous orbiting satellites, which had just been launched. And only 3 satellites to cover the whole globe. And communications could be, we didn't have them then. It's hard for people to imagine today. There were, here in the United States, 3 broadcast networks and nothing else. And around the world, maybe 1 or 2 government-owned television networks. And I thought, wow, this is so powerful. And it was I said, I got to do something. These satellites are so powerful. I didn't know what it was going to be. I left that lecture, which was being given by a famous science fiction writer, Arthur C. Clarke, who's also a gifted scientist. And it was an idea that would never let me go. I had to pursue it. I went on to write my master's thesis on satellite technology in 1968, when no one on this call was born. And so there are people that preceded you out there. And I took 7 years to really get in position in different industries, satellite, cable, television, but I worked in all of them to be at the right place at the right time. Something that you just mentioned, the Thriller from Manila, September 30th, 1975, still rated as the #1 heavyweight boxing match of all time. Yes. One could not have launched the career of a person with a more powerful signal. We brought it around the world from Manila to Vero Beach, Florida, and demonstrated for Congress and the people in the industry that satellites would really open up the cable television industry, which was just a sort of rural antenna system at the time. And I mean, it's what my dad used to tell me, luck happens when preparation and opportunity meet, and
Mm,
then you get lucky. And that was the night I launched my career.
that's amazing.
So,
And you,
yeah,
and you had doubters, in the room at the time, right? You had politicians saying, I don't know about this. And that was a major game changer. Literally,
it was.
think
It
about it now,
was.
beaming that
Yeah,
fight around the globe,
yeah.
which we could do with this technology right now. But
Well,
literally, you had to take into consideration rockets, governments, satellites. That nobody had done it before. Um,
it
what
was.
like
It was a
ringside?
wonderful, wonderful time. It was the Wild West. It was a wonderful time to really not only launch a company, launch an industry. So it was launching and for the students, it's a good thing to think about when is the market ready, because it I had to wait 7 years for the market to be ready. I wrote my master's thesis in 68. I had to work in the industries for 7 years before the market was ready to do what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
And I know part of your question to me was, well, were there barriers? Did you think, look, there were barriers. People in the television business didn't think cable wouldn't be anything. It was, not worth talking about. Um, no one ever saw a woman do this before. They thought, who is this babe? Who's she? Well, they found out. It really was a fascinating time. And I never gave one moment of thought to being anything else but an entrepreneur, someone who saw an opportunity in the market and who wanted to, put that into place. I never thought of it as like being a woman doing it or whatever it is. But I did work when I was a senior, and just after senior year in college, I worked at WTMJ, a television station in Milwaukee, the biggest station there. And I was just working there for the summertime, producing, because I did produce television as part of my working my way through school. And I understood that those people thought, oh, wow, look at this person. She's reached the pinnacle of her career, 20 years old, and she's a producer. And I thought, they don't understand me. I get that. They don't understand that I don't want to be the president of this television station. I don't want to be the president of the Milwaukee Journal that owns a television station. I want to be the president of NBC. And I knew that when they looked at me, they didn't get it. They didn't get that a woman would want to do all of that. And I said, I'm out of here. I've got to start my own. I've got to do something on my own, because that's the only way it's going to happen for me. And today it's different. This is going way back, but you talk about barriers, and what do? You figure out how to get around them. And even today, there are different kinds of barriers. I would do a lot of work in funding and raising funds for women entrepreneurs in technology and life sciences today. Still a tough road.
Mm,
Still a tough road. Shouldn't be. Still a tough road.
yeah.
So, it there are lots of things, but for students who are thinking about business um, and thinking about the opportunities, it's really looking to me. It's like, well, there's opportunities in corporations. You can be, go to work for corporations, for companies. You can be an entrepreneur. You can go into the arts. You can do a lot of different industries. Every industry today has business and technology attached to it. Every single one. There isn't, much that isn't attached to it today. So in some way, there's a lot of creativity in business. It's how do you create something that doesn't exist? Or how do you do something better that exists, but you have a new idea about how it can be done better? How do you motivate people? How do you get people on board with you? If you want to be a leader, well, a leader needs followers. And, it's really developing those kind of skills that are really important for leadership roles. So, it's something I'm a big believer in on the job training. Almost everything I learned, I didn't go to business school. Um, I was in communications and, believe it or not, biology. And I really was thinking of being a neurosurgeon. And I am so grateful that I went to that lecture on satellites. It is so much more akin to my own personalities and things that drive me. And all these people walking around today with safe brains are probably glad I went into satellites, because I'm sure I was much better suited to the media business than I would have been in the operating room. So, but these are serendipitous moments. You know, I also believe very strongly in the serendipitous moments of life, and we all have them. Aha, and that's interesting. Not very many people act on them, but I'm a big believer in acting. Look, I've failed to act on times when I had that opportunity too. So we don't all recognize the moment for what it is all the time, but curiosity is a really big part of it. Keep open-minded and look for the opportunities that are, something is going to speak to you. Something is really going to speak to you, but, and that's the thing to pursue.
That's fantastic. From your perspective, working with Springboard, and I just even reading the news, I mean, it's been a heck of a year for everyone. Is there anybody that really has piqued your interest, right? You saw and said, you know, that's amazing. Whether it's a Springboard funded project or not, because we talk to so many different students that are in transition, you know,
Yeah.
about starting a new company. That's why a lot of students consider an MBA, is they think, all right, what am I missing, and how can the MBA help me with applied learning, with relevant, modern, you know, project-based learning to fill in those gaps, help me build out a business plan, or get promoted, or move to, you know, owner of the network, starting your own network, whatever that may be. I'm curious from your desk, what's amazed you, or, you know, any businesses or stories, or women-owned or otherwise, that have, you know, really blown you out of the water?
Well, I know one of the things you were curious about is what have women-owned businesses have been doing, or women, and we call them, our people that come through our cohorts are women who are transforming industry. So they're looking to be big global companies. They're not small businesses, and nothing wrong with small businesses at all. They're just not what we do. So we're looking for technology-driven and science-driven companies. And during this year of COVID, it's been really, really interesting to work with different companies. And I'm talking now about some of them from our cohorts. There are alumni of our program, but let me give you a couple examples. One is Julia Cheek. She's the founder and CEO of a company called Everly Well. It's based in Austin, Texas. It is a home testing company. So it does tests of all kinds of allergies and things like, you know, diabetes, various things, home testing. And her company's about 5 years old, and it right at the very beginning, when the information was coming from China about a COVID, and before it even really that president of the United States, she understood the potential impact on the market, that this thing could spread like wildfire. And even as a company that was in a growing stage, that wasn't profitable yet, she took $1 million out of her budget, and in 8 weeks, she and her head of science created a home testing for COVID-19. And they had to go through the CDC, they had to go through all these, you know, testing and so forth. But they were the first company that was approved for home testing for COVID-19. It was an example of someone who leapt to an opportunity that wasn't even highly defined. We didn't even know. I live in New York City. We didn't, in Manhattan, and we didn't know what hit us in Manhattan. We didn't. It was like death to us in the streets. It was really, really tight lockdown. It was frightening. People were dying all around us. It was awful. And way before that, though, way before that, 30 days before that, she decided she's going to try to develop a home test. Now, during the year, and at the end of this last fall, she raised another $175 million, creating her company valuation of over $1.3 billion. And then in January, another 75. million. And she is like really on the map and growing like exponentially, not just for COVID-19, but for all the types of home testing that she's doing. So you're thinking about, here is a person that is working with a science-based company, but really knows what's driving the business and the consumer. What does the consumer need in this? And if all of us who've gone to the 3 big lab test processes through our doctor's offices, we know sometimes we don't get results for 2 weeks. Well, in COVID, that wasn't acceptable. And, and so she was able to use independent labs and get tests back to people in 3 days. And so it's really a fascinating story and a real business story, because she understood her business model so well and what you could create. So I have there are other, tell you another great story for the business students here.
Yeah.
You don't have to be a scientist to run a biotech company. I'll tell you about Sheila McHale, who has been the head of Ask Bio. She's been the CEO and founder of Ask Bio. It's a gene therapy company. She's a lawyer by background and a business person. And she teamed up with a scientist who had gene therapy technology when nobody wanted to talk about it. It was 18 years ago. People said, this is a folly. This doesn't really work. We don't really understand how this works. We don't want to get into editing genes. It's going to change. It's too risky and all this sort of stuff. Well, along comes CRISPR, gene editing. And then everybody started saying, wait a minute, we can do things with people's genes to perfect what is wrong. So we have companies. So that company, Ask Bio, sold in December of last year to Bayer for $4 billion. I mean, it became from nothing for years, scraping by, selling off spin-offs from her lab, her lab and things like that to keep the company going for years. Nobody would even talk to her. They said gene editing, too risky. Nobody wanted to put our money there. So for the people who are here thinking about, you can team up with people that have a different, experience and a different, set of their credentials, like a scientist, for example. You don't have to be a scientist yourself. You can create the business models that really make them work. And Sheila's a great example of that. She teamed up with and the reason she teamed up with the gentleman who was the first gene therapy, developer, is because he had no idea how to commercialize it. He had this, but he didn't know what to do with it. And along comes Sheila and creates the business. And so you talk about I'm telling people, there are opportunities everywhere. And since COVID in this last year, and we're still going through it, it's not over. It's changed everything in terms of, what the opportunities are, creating new models of business, accessing people. I think we went from 5 years into 5 months of how to communicate like this, and all kinds of buying patterns and all kinds of treatment patterns. And the vaccine itself, Pfizer's vaccine, Moderna's vaccine, in particular, are RNA, they're mRNA vaccines. You want to know something for the students sitting there, how long it took them once they got antibodies from someone who had COVID-19, how long it took them to create the vaccine?
It was fast.
2 hours at Pfizer, 2 hours, and 1 day at Moderna. But they only could do that because there was 10 years of research, and they didn't know if it would work. And they invested the money, and U.S. government also invested some money, especially part of from Moderna. They were a very small company. 10 years did not have one successful product. Comes along this COVID, and in 24 hours, they've got the vaccine. The rest of it's trying to get through clinical trials and all this sort of testing that had to go on, the CDC and all of that. But let me tell you about another company, one run by Michelle Longmire, who has a company called Medable. And Medable is a company out of San Jose, California, that is a global, decentralized clinical trial testing platform to completely diversify the people in clinical tests. And one of the big problems here in the United States with the clinical testing was to get enough diversity in the clinical tests to say that this would work in the market for people of all different ethnic and backgrounds and, you know, cultural background, not cultural, but ethnic backgrounds and lineage. And here's a person who starts a global decentralized platform where patients can actually sign up for clinical trials if it's something that they're concerned that they have or they might have. And that is a fascinating change also of the clinical trial process. So you'd say, well, what were women doing during this period of time? They were knocking the ball out of the park. You know, it was exciting to see, but it's not just women, men were doing it too. I mean, you know, we all sort of grew up very quickly and got a grasp of how the world had changed in a microcosm. So, you know, people pursuing a business career, I guess I'm biased. I think entrepreneurism is because my chosen field. But, you know, corporate and other things are available too, and they need the changes. And large corporations actually, in mid cap, small cap, large cap corporations, all need to introduce continuously changes in technology to really bolster their business. And this is what's happening in really a concentrated period of time right now. So having the fundamentals of business fundamentals, which remember, I didn't, I had to learn on the job, but that's good too. But if you bring the fundamentals into the environment, understand the business fundamentals, you have the opportunity to really look for opportunities where other people don't occupy the space and create things that are very exciting, whether that's inside a corporation or, you know, on your own.
Yeah. There was an interview from you probably 8 years ago, and it felt like it was from 8 minutes ago, because you were talking about the change in shorter form. You know, this is what networks need to do, is give the consumers what they want on more channels. And you really you forecasted what is coming, and that is what Disney Plus is right now. So sign up for a monthly subscription, and if you like it, you'll keep renewing. I'm curious from your perspective, because you saw, I think, the industry with pandemic pivot and say, well, let's put our first run movies directly into this and see what happens. And now they're doing it right now. Their model is, I don't know, let's put this great movie together and we'll put it onto Paramount or Disney Plus or Hulu, or, you know, wherever it can make the most money. But if you had to have, if this video plays in 4, 5, 6, 7 years, what's that next moment? I think for entertainment and for sports, does it continue to get fragmented and or change with more interactivity?
Okay.
What's your best guess?
The big difference now from 8 years ago, you're talking about, is the globalization. We have this immense global, international, many countries that can access what we're doing right now and can access streaming from any country. And, you know, I think that the business models haven't necessarily proven out yet. Netflix, I mean, people ask, you know, in different news shows that I've been on, asked about, you know, the lead. I said, look, they're lead and out there so far in advance, and they've spent so much money on streaming only, and now they're doing some releases into movies. And Disney has made a big, you know, leap into it. You know, potentially the Warner fusing with Discovery, and Discovery has a very big international distribution. This is what it's going. It's going to, you know, it's going to consolidate around some of the biggest providers. But there are going to be more very specific interests that are going to be able to be sustainable out there if you can attract them. So there's no barrier to entry. The question is, can you find your audience? Can you find, you know, can your audience find you? You know, I'm a big tennis fan. I go to tennis events. I'm really happy that I have the tennis channel. There are not that many people that want to sit and watch tennis. You know, it's not like the NBA or something, or world soccer kind of thing, but I'm really happy with it. And, there are all kinds of, that's a sports thing, but in terms of Americans never really watch subtitled series.
Hmm.
Today, they are finding all kinds of creative product from different countries. Right now, I'm watching a Turkish series that is all subtitled. I don't speak Turkish and it's in Turkish, and I am totally captivated by it. So, I think we all learn to do things. And this is the provider, the creator used to be in control. Now the consumer is in control. And the thing about these streaming models is you can go in and out of them. When it was in cable, you signed up and it was kind of like you never got out. You just signed up and you kept paying for it. And, because it was all bundled up and, you got everything that you got, how many channels. Streaming, you can go in and out of streaming services at whim. So I think we're still learning about the long-term viability of streaming, but the reason it's bolstered and the reason Netflix is so successful in bringing in revenue is that they have this global audience. And there's going to be more creativity from different sources around the globe. And people are all learning to live with that. So no matter where you're from or where you are, you can actually access something from your hometown if you want to, or your home team if you want to. So it's really a change. We're going through a major sea change, and I think there'll be more consolidation as we go through this of the big players, but I think there'll be a lot of other players and special interests out there.
You started with Madison Square Garden, which really was
the
brainchild for USA Network.
Yeah.
And obviously your passion to sports, which you still have. In a nutshell, what's the next year of live entertainment sports?
Well, as far as sports are concerned, I think that as far as what you have to attend in person, that you really want to be present in person, I think sports reigns. News might come next, but you can see what's happening to like even the Oscars and the global, creative awards. Their attendance to them is going way down. It's not the must see that it used to be. Now, big movie franchises, big series that catch on with people but none of those are must see in real time. You can see them whenever you want to see them. That's the other thing that's really changed. Now you're in control of your viewing schedule, except for live sports and maybe live news to a certain degree. But since it's 24 hours, so many places around the world, you can always tune in and tune out. And it's not like I have to be on it this minute, unless it's, unfortunately, something bad has happened, or maybe it's an election or something. But I mean, it isn't what CNN, when it launched, and was the only global, really, news network back in the 80s. That was really, really global. The BBC came along with much more global, not that long after it. But, today there's so many news sources and so many online news sources, so many television. But you see things going back and forth. You see things coming out of the streaming services going to TV. The thing that is different is that TV is more of a branding experience. The streaming can be a branding, but if you're looking as an advertising vehicle like Facebook does, placing digital advertising very specifically to you, a lot of creative that goes to, they also would like to get a television exposure because it still is a bigger branding opportunity for them. So these things are sort of intermingling now. And you see that some of the movies are going to go to streaming first before theater, or theater and then streaming immediately after, like 1 week. You're seeing all these models change. And it's a fascinating time in the media and, the entertainment business and the sports business. Fascinating. Well, you saw in the World Soccer how 12 teams the super teams were all going to go and form their own league. And that lasted about 2.5 days. And the fans were in an uproar, and they said, well, maybe that wasn't such a good idea after all. So anyway, that competition stays pretty much as it was, but people want to get back in the stands. People want to go. It's an event they want to be at.
Yeah,
So
there's something about that live energy that you, as much as you may try, you can't replicate some of that on the Zoom call or
no, you can't. You can't. Or concerts, the concert tour, all of that's in the music world, that kind of thing. People want to be present. They want to have that energy. It's you
yeah.
can appreciate something. I watched Hamilton again on, streaming movie, and it was very exciting, but it wasn't like being in the theater.
Mm.
No, it was very, very well done. Excellent. If you never saw it in the theater, you wouldn't know the difference. But if you did see it in the theater, you would.
Well,
So,
that's the lifeblood of New York City for sure. I know they're
yeah,
eager to get back.
learning something new, like business skills that maybe you didn't go to business school. Maybe you were a history major and you're now thinking about going to get an MBA, add that on. I would say it's a great time to learn new skills, to learn new insights, wherever it is. I mean, you might have gone to business school and started painting and during the period of time just to be the opposite. But I think as far as business is concerned, if you're uncertain as to what direction you want to go, I would say try it. You learn new skills. Those new skills can be put together in lots of different industries, and it's a good skill set to have. It's just like for lawyers, a good skill set to have if you never even practice law. You understand some of the intricacies that are in regulated environments or things that you have to. So there's understanding. I would say technology is something you do have to understand. And I think probably most people that are on this call are technologically adept because you grew up with it. Unlike me, I didn't. I had to keep learning. I have to learn every day something new. And I get frustrated sometimes when I don't see what I'm doing wrong. But I don't think those are also skills that are mandatory, no matter what you decide to do, because that's the world that we're living in, and the world we compressed our time frame for understanding during this pandemic, I think. And so, yeah, I would say if you're just not really sure, I think it's a really good time to learn new skills, learn new ways of operating. And look, the business models today are changing very rapidly. They really are. And I hope that business schools and MBAs are really thinking about the changes that are necessary for the world we're going into, not the one we came from. Because there are lots of new business models and not the way of thinking about, P&Ls and balance sheets and all that sort of stuff, but how it's applied, how we apply it to whether you're inside a corporation, start a business, work in the creative arts, all these different things. People who are on the creative side still need to know, well, how am I going to make a living doing this? What kind of business can I get? How can I sell it? And today there are, many ways to go about doing that. So a little understanding of all that really is helpful.
Really, really great advice from somebody who, as I was going to say, been there, done that, but I think your book has been there, led that.
I think the book's called Been There, Done That because all the women who contributed to the book have done it. And it was really their story. So, so that was really great. But anyway, I just think it's the most fascinating of times. It's just, I wake up every single day and I think of all the possibilities. I think of there's so many things to do today that are all in change. And you have to remember, in chaos, there's opportunity. When things are all static, it's very hard to break in, whether you're trying to climb the ladder inside a corporation or you're trying to start a business or you're trying to do something else, teach, whatever you're doing. When things are chaotic, it's a time to move aggressively. It really is. It's a time to think of, because everybody's sort of off kilter a little bit and there's room to move in. This is one of the great, completely tectonic shift times of our lifetime. And the opportunities are boundless. It's just unbelievable. It's so I'm excited for you people that are thinking about getting their MBA, thinking about what they want to do. Learn some new skills and put them to work. I think you'll you'll find the things that really speak to you. As I always say, if it speaks to me, if I really feel it speaks to me, then I want to pursue it, whether it's supporting someone, investing in someone, doing something myself. Don't go down a path that doesn't speak to you. Life is to live. Do something that you find that is something that you really want to pursue.